Reviews are a cornerstone of our modern-day internet. Whenever a new piece of media becomes unleashed upon the ravenous peoples of the internet, you can expect to witness an overwhelming influx of content covering that piece of art. People, channels, even entire companies are dedicated to the act of reviewing and discussing different types of media. Because of this and the widespread use of social media, it's become more accessible than ever to find out what people say about each new release. Entire sites exist just to catalog, chronicle, and collect these reviews. Metacritic, Rotten Tomatoes, and IMDb are all examples of websites that serve that exact purpose. While these review chronicling sites' primary function is to, chronicle reviews, they can serve a different function in modern internet culture, a more harmful function. What forbidden power could give reviews this ability? What could possibly cause this severe harm to art and culture? Well, I believe that to be the average critic review score. Yeah, Satan, Hades, Justin Bieber, nah. They all have nothing compared to the evil of 7 out of 10. You might ask, why talk about review scores when you could talk about, I don't know, famine, disease, or the rapid decay of our natural environment? In response, I ask you, which of these is responsible for people assuming Shrek Super Slam's a merely mediocre game? That's what I thought. Let's talk about review scores. Review scores are nothing new. People have been assigning scores to try and objectify and quantify their feelings about different things for ages. Stars, grades, numbers, words, emotions, they all have been used as scales for evaluation so people can try and explain how they feel about certain things. And you have definitely seen an example of it before. Amazon reviews, Yelp reviews, even the American education system each use some sort of scale for people to rate products, places, and poor performances respectively. And despite the title of this video, I do think that these scores are a handy tool when discussing media. Having an objective way for people to rank and rate the things they experience is something that is valuable. Review scores are like the punctuation at the end of a sentence. They characterize and summarize what came before them with something simple and understandable. Scores are also able to allow individuals to personally show how they feel about a piece of media relative to other pieces of media that individual has scored. People's own personal scores can give valuable insight into how they think new products compared to ones they've reviewed in the past, and even what they value in the media they consume. They are, to reiterate, like the punctuation at the end of a sentence, a small encapsulation of the emotion of the text that preceded it. I know that a period may not seem like the most emotional thing, but you haven't seen what that period has seen. It's seen the end. And the end is horrifying. Well, I don't think review scores are nearly as essential as punctuation is. I mean, written language as a whole would not collapse without the existence of review scores, so I think they sit a little lower on the proverbial podium. But I still think they are good tools that can be used for good discussion when used goodly. However, I do believe that these tools are not being used goodly. Just like the chainsaw at a barbershop, review scores are the victims of misuse and misunderstanding. A problematic misconception of what they mean exists today, and I believe that misconception is fueled by Metacritic, Rotten Tomatoes, and the other review collecting websites. But why is that? Think about it like this. When you look up a game, movie, or TV show, what are some of the first things you see? That's right, the average score. Because of this, the average scores can become integral parts to a product's identity. Just like the severed limb of an Acer saccharinum, these scores can stick. But why is this sticking a problem? You might ask. Why do you hate these metaphorical sticks? Well, my problem doesn't really stem from the review scores themselves, rather the increased importance they have. I said in prior that these scores can sometimes become intrinsically linked with their respective products, and it's this stick that is the stick I take issue with. Allow me to explain. What's the math? Let's use the Metacritic page for some random game. Let's just pick this for example. There are 43 different critic reviews linked here. I took a sample of about 10 of these reviews and did a word count on each of them. Presented here is the result of that word count. I added these up and divided by the sample size, 10 reviews, to get an average word count of 938, rounded down. Multiplying that by 43 gets us a ballpark estimate of 42,269 words about this hellish waterfowl. So that's about 42,000 words about this game, its strengths, its weaknesses, what it does well, and what it could do better on. It's 42,000 words constructively creating a complete critique. It's 42,000 words discussing this piece of art. So what does Metacritic average critic review score use to summarize all these reviews? 2 numbers. 2 singular digits. That's all. Do these 2 digits tell you much about the game? Sure, they'll tell you the general critical atmosphere, whether that be positive or negative, and the extent of those emotions in a general sense. But what they don't tell you is why. What aspects of the game caused critics to praise or critique the product? What specific emotions did the game elicit? What makes this thing so good or bad? The score doesn't tell you, and frankly, it's not supposed to. As I keep reiterating, review scores, to me, are like the punctuation at the end of a sentence. While useful, taken in isolation, they are practically useless. See these? Do they show you the meaning of the sentences that preceded them? Perhaps a small amount, but as you can clearly see, they fail to convey the full message. With just the punctuation, you are unable to see everything that leads up to it. You have no frame of reference for why the writer put the punctuation where they did. These symbols mean almost nothing on their own, but when they are paired with the sentences they are written with, they make much more sense. Review scores are the punctuation of reviews, and just like punctuation, their meaning can be interpreted differently from person to person. So let's all segue over to my next point, subjectivity. Review scores may be a tool to help create an objective representation of a reviewer's feelings, but that objectivity is always derived from subjectivity. Think about it like this. What does a 5 out of 10 product mean to you? Mathematically, it's the halfway point between 0 and 10, so it would be average in this range. So it means the product is average. But what does average mean? Does it mean passable? Is it the threshold right before being passable? Or is it the start of being good? And is average considered acceptable? Or does it imply stagnation? And is that stagnation acceptable? Conversely, what about a 10 out of 10? Is that even something that is possible? If it is, what does that look like? Is a 10 out of 10 a revolutionary new thing that breaks every possible convention? Or could it just be a very polished execution of an existing concept? Does it just signify the presence of an adorable puppy? If so, what about 101 Dalmatians? Mathematically, there are 101 adorable puppies, so what does that mean for the score? Does it just get a 1010 out of 10? But that doesn't even make mathematical sense, as it would surpass 100%, so do dogs just shatter the review system and break all laws of mathematics? Well, maybe. There is no universal grading criteria on what makes something good or bad. There is no universal rubric for the evaluation of media, nor the evaluation of anything. It's down to the individual to decide what these scores mean to them and what constitutes a higher or lower score. That's why there can be a big disconnect when reviewers and the viewers of those reviews have different ideas about what scores mean. People on the internet, as you are probably aware, can get very upset about these scores when they feel they are unjust, partially probably because of the heightened importance they have. People can sometimes have what I have humbly dubbed score deservedness mentality. This way of thinking is, in my humble opinion, flawed. Determining one's score based on what will make the average score what it, quote, should be, unquote, is a flawed methodology. but that is fairly obvious. What this does is further illustrate the context these scores have and why that context can be problematic. While I think the prominence of Metacritic and Friends' aggregate scores can be harmful, I don't think it's all bad. People being able to see a simplistic symbol that instantly conveys a simplistic understanding of a simplified critical consensus is something that does carry some value. It would be impossible for every person to read every single review on a piece of media ever released, much less every review on everything ever. So I don't think it's unreasonable for someone to look at an average review score and feel like they have a simplistic understanding of the product's criticism. What I want people to realize is that these scores are simplistic and not representative of the entire criticism of the product. My aim with this video is not to condemn the use of review scores. Rather, I simply want to change the lens through how these scores are viewed. Scores are excellent tools for discussing and evaluating media on a personal level. But when people only focus on the score, it greatly simplifies the discussion can be had around art. When the scores become the discussion rather than a part of it, they are problematic. I love talking about pieces of media I'm passionate about and discussing them with others. Reviewing reviews can be a part of that, and the reviewing process is something I personally enjoy to review. The discourse about what people like and dislike and the intricacies and nuances on why they feel that way is something I find fascinating and valuable. You apparently agree with me because you just sat through this video talking about that. When we simplify this discourse down to just what the score is, we lose all those intricacies and that nuance. And to me, that is sad. That's why I want people to see beyond just the score so you and I and everyone can have those discussions. Is it a small issue? Yes, but it represents a trend I see among the mass populace to use simplistic means of communication to discuss complex issues that could be explored further with more complex forms of expression. I know that sentence was just a pile of proverbial word vomit, but in essence what I'm seeking is for people to think more in their discussion, and understanding what these scores are and what their limitations are can help everyone have better and more well thought out discussion. Scores are simplistic, and they are meant to be. The discussion about a review shouldn't be completely focused on the score, rather the actual points the review makes. After all, that is the tasty meat of the review, and everybody likes tasty meat, unless you are a vegetarian, in which case it would be the tasty veggie patties. Tasty proverbial veggie patties.